Ryan, you had a huge health scare at the end of May, ending up with surgery to remove a brain tumor from your brain stem. What happened, and how are you doing now?
Well, it was something that just happened over time that I started feeling sick, lethargic. My vision in my eyes started to bother me, so we thought it was a bunch of different things. We tried a bunch of different angles, but ultimately we had a CT scan and they found it. And before I knew it, I mean, that happened May 19th, and May 25th I was in emergency surgery to have it removed. They got most of it. I feel 100% better, symptom-free. Sometimes I forget that I actually had brain surgery because I'm out playing golf or enjoying myself, but my body reminds me pretty quickly that I needed to get in and rest because of it.
An obvious high, being drafted number 2 overall by the San Diego Chargers in '98, but things never really went well there. If you could go back and do that over, that part of your life over, are there things you would do differently that you think might lead to success?
The main thing that I would change was probably going back to school for my senior year. I think that would have been the best possible thing for me, to sit with Mike Price another year. Most of our team would have been dissipated with the loss of the seniors. We would have struggled a bit. I would have to deal with adversity, maybe failing, losing a little bit that season, and figuring out a way to deal with it in a positive way, and then turning that into wins with a team that was going to be very young.
You thought you were ready back then, and you found out you weren't ready.
Definitely. But everybody does at 21 years old. I think everybody thinks they have full control of the world, especially just coming from a Rose Bowl and leading the team to a possible national championship. I think that I saw a definite change in my persona from the Apple Cup to the Rose Bowl, and that's because of the national notoriety I started to get, and I think I started to believe everything, and specifically became very entitled and felt like if anything went wrong, somebody was going to fix it and make it better for me.
When we talk about your time in San Diego, an almost iconic moment was caught by a news camera showing you in the locker room yelling at a newspaper reporter. And that video still lives on YouTube. Anybody can watch it.
Don't talk to me, all right? Knock it off!
What do you think about yourself back then when you see that video?
It's embarrassing, for a young man to react that way. I think I don't see myself getting angry anymore, and that's about growing up. When I got cornered or became defensive, my way of dealing with the situation was to intimidate the person. So that was my way of intimidating them, and I don't think it would be such a big issue if there wouldn't have been a camera in the locker room. Of course, it would have just been another player probably yelling at a reporter, but it was caught on video and it will stay there forever. I can't take it back. It's embarrassing to see, but I can laugh at it now because it was just something. No one got hurt. It was just an immature young man getting angry at somebody.
People will point at you and say, biggest bust ever in the NFL. How do you deal with that? How did you deal with that? How do you deal with that?
Well, I probably am. I probably am the biggest bust ever because of the expectations that were levied on me. The expectations I had for myself, the expectations the team had for me, the fact that the internet just came out in 1998, and also who I came into the league with, who arguably is probably the best NFL quarterback to play the game. So I think those three components make that comment, very true. Though, to be the number one bust, you have to be pretty damn good. I'm still proud of that I got to that level. I'm not proud of the way I acted when I did get to that level, and that's the difference.
So you get a job coaching quarterbacks at West Texas A&M, and by all accounts, you were pretty good at it.
Well, I had great kids. I got there and inherited a great quarterback, and then had two individuals that really worked hard, listened to me, and were great leaders and great quarterbacks. And they both ended up throwing for almost 10,000 yards, and all three of them are going to be playing professionally out of a Division II school. So I feel very good about that. I miss coaching them. I miss those young men.
So that job came to an end when an addiction to prescription painkillers led to your arrest on drug charges. How did you become addicted?
Well, I think that it comes from a lot of the injuries that I sustained over my NFL and collegiate career. That's the only thing that I ever took. When I was physically injured, they gave us painkillers to get through it so we could play. Down the line, 3 years into my job, still being considered the bust, still being considered a failure, I became emotionally pained. And I wasn't talking to anybody about it. I was keeping it all in, trying to be stoic and being prideful. And when I was in physical pain, I took that. So what would do it for me when I was in emotional pain was the same thing. I found what worked, and it was a prescription painkiller from a doctor. You know, I was in denial that it was an addiction. I was in denial that I wasn't doing something wrong because it wasn't considered a taboo, like street drugs and things of that nature. I got caught, and I was put in a situation where I needed to get better, and that ultimately changed my life.
They say you have to hit bottom before you get help.
Bottom for me was asking one of my players who I loved coaching and who loved me and took advantage of him by asking for some of his pain pills. I think that's the most embarrassing thing I've ever done in my life. But bottom could have been much lower for me, I think, and I think I owe that to my notoriety. Not only did I get dismissed, but it was on the banner of ESPN, it was in the magazines, it was in newspapers. I was thoroughly confronted with my problem and had to take course-correcting action, which I did. And if I wasn't that person, who knows? It could have led to my death. It could have just kept going on and became a much more bigger problem until I killed myself.
You said in a radio interview that you were looking forward at that point in your life when after you'd gone to rehab, to reconnecting with your family, your mom, your dad, your brothers. Were you really disconnected from them?
I think I've been disconnected from everybody who unconditionally loved me for years. When I took that leap to the NFL, if people weren't with me, they were against me in my mind, included my family. I mean, I think the biggest thing, I didn't want to have my father seeing me fail at that level. So I pushed him away rather than, taking help from him, because I just didn't want him to see me, weak in my mind.
And you reconnected with your Cougar family, and I see you smile about that. Tell me what that means to you.
They're amazing, and the reason there was a disconnect there wasn't because I didn't want to be back with them. I just felt embarrassed and ashamed that I let them down as a professional. And it was totally the opposite. They wanted to wrap their arms around me.
That was an important part of your life, those 4 years you were at Washington State. Do you realize now what that meant to you, and maybe more importantly, what that meant to Cougar fans?
Yeah, what it meant to me it was the greatest 4 years of my life. That may change, but I will always have unbelievably fond memories of my 4 years at Washington State, living in Pullman, being in the Inland Northwest. The biggest change in me is the fact that when I hear people tell stories about the '98 season, I understand what kind of impact it had on them, and it had nothing to do with me. This was all about Cougars coming together. It wasn't about one individual. It was about that team. It was about this city. It was about the Inland Northwest. And to hear their stories now, how that changed, just brings a smile on my face when I get to hear them. And the fact that I actually listen to them and understand that this effectively affected them, not me.